I'm going to show you one of the most subtly insidious clips of Dr. Jordan B. Peterson that I have. He discusses the issue in several videos, one with Molyneux himself, and refers to it as the most horrifying fact he has ever...
This video right here is the one with the Ashkenazi Jews. I remember that clip.
So the setup here is that Jordan Peterson is about to say something so, like he said, this is the most insidious, horrible thing he's ever heard Jordan Peterson say. Okay, so keep that in your mind.
And this one's the one with the military research guy.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
So get ready. You're gonna hear the most crazy, insane, insidious thing you've ever heard in your life.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm doubtful.
Ever heard, and it's the main reason I've always wanted this video about him to exist.
So this one clip spawned this entire process that we've had to sit through.
He's going full Biden here. He's like, listen, I was not going to run for president, something that will completely elevate my status into the stratosphere. I wasn't going to do that. I don't care about my status, but Trump praised neo-Nazis one time in Charlottesville. And now all of a sudden, I have to run for leader of the free world.
Right. Jordan Peterson. This was Jordan Peterson's fine people moment. Okay.
Right. It was. He's like, I wasn't going to make this video. But one time in 2018, Jordan Peterson tweeted out this tweet.
Right. Now look, guys. I know we do a comedy show. In finger quotes.
Well, I mean, in quotes.
Right.
Comedy show.
Right. So you expect this to be very light. So I want you guys to just brace yourselves. Brace yourselves for how heinous what you're about to hear Jordan Peterson say. Okay. Make sure you're sitting. Make sure any small children or animals have left the room. Make sure if you're wearing any hats to take them off because they'll pop up in comedic shock when you hear what Jordan Peterson's about to say. You might want to put your hands on your head to keep your hair from standing up on end to end. Okay, just be prepared.
I'm just hoping I don't shit my pants.
Also, make sure that if you're prone to shitting your pants out of shock or fear, that you're either not wearing pants, or on the toilet, or wearing a diaper.
Okay, here it is.
Here we go.
One of the most terrifying statistics I ever came across was one detailing out the rationale of the United States Armed Forces for not allowing you can't induct anyone into the armed forces in the U.S. if they have an IQ of less than 83. Okay, so let's just take that apart for a minute because it's a horrifying thing. So the U.S. Armed Forces has been in the forefront of intelligence research since World War I because they were on board early with the idea that, especially during wartime when you're ramping up quickly, that you need to sort people effectively and essentially without prejudice so that you can build up the officer corps so you don't lose the damn war. Okay, so there's real motivation to get it right, because it's a life and death issue. So they used IQ. They did a lot of the early psychometric work on IQ.
Okay, two things. Number one,
wait. Yeah, where's the stuff?
Did you guys all lose your minds? Did you all shit your brains out your butt? Okay, did your head fall off out of shock and fear of the heinousness that Jordan Peterson just said in that clip?
I mean, I'm still waiting to hear it.
This is a clip so bad that Cody had to do this entire 3-hour video because of this one clip.
Because
the military didn't want to have people with less than 80 IQ fucking be in the military.
You know, if I'm gonna like parachute into a place with a bunch of guys with guns to try to accomplish something, I kind of don't want any dumb guys with me. I don't know about you, Sitch, but I kind of think leave the dumb guys at home. What is your take?
I mean, I think that, well, first of all, it's weird because you think that generally the left, who is more anti-military, would say that it's inhumane for the military to be drafting people and taking advantage of them who have low IQs.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that would be a common left-wing talking point.
McNamara's morons. I told you, I pulled the clip.
Right.
You know what they did with those guys? The guys who didn't know how to throw a hand grenade?
They put them as cannon
fodder.
They
shipped them off to fucking Vietnam.
Yep. Well, we'll talk about that when that comes up. But, you know, I thought that would have been the left-wing talking point. I would have thought the left-wing talking point would have been, we shouldn't have low IQ people in the military because they're more likely to harm others, themselves or other people that are innocent.
Yeah.
You know, if you're really worried about civilian casualties and things of that nature. But no, it's coming from Jordan Peterson's mouth, so it has to somehow become the most heinous, evil, craziest, mind-shittingest thing you've ever heard.
Yeah, no.
So you don't lose the damn war. Okay, so there's real motivation to get it right? Because it's a life and death issue. So they used IQ. And they did a lot of the early psychometric work on IQ.
Okay, two things. Number one, everything you just said is wrong. The armed forces don't do IQ tests and don't have a rule about having an IQ less than 83. They just don't. They do have something called the Armed Forces Qualification Test, but have said that those tests do not perfectly match up with an IQ test, and the requirements are flexible. You can do poorly on the test and still get into the military. Also, as I noted, IQ tests...
Okay, first of all, everything he just said is wrong. Okay.
Oh, really? Hilarious.
Well, he said it. This is the exact language he said. So it's true that the military doesn't do an IQ test, okay? When you enter the military. They do, as he said, they do the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. However, this is a reason why Cody very snakily and disgustingly used very specific language. See if you caught it.
Everything he just said is wrong. The armed forces don't do IQ tests and don't have a rule about having an IQ less than 83. They just don't. They do have something called the Armed Forces Qualification Test, but have said that those tests do not perfectly match up with an IQ test.
Those tests do not perfectly match up.
That word
with the
perfectly.
IQ test.
Yeah.
Oh, doing a lot of legwork there. Okay. Now, if you actually read, and this is why you know Cody Johnson's a dishonest, lying piece of shit snake. Let's read what it says on screen. I don't know what the source is, but I've seen this repeated. It says, question, do we have a does the test, the IQ test correlate with the AFQT test? Okay. Though I think now it's called, this might be old because it's called the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. So the ASVAB, but maybe this is from an old thing. And it says, yes. So the question is, do we have a correlation between IQ and the test the military gives people to test their intelligence? And the answer is yes.
Of course. Yeah, of course
okay.
it is. It says IQ test.
Right. The correlation between the test that the military gives and IQ tests is about 0.8.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, a perfect correlation is 1.
Yes. Yeah.
So 0.8 is very close
Yeah.
to that. That's a very highly correlated
80%.
Okay. And that's even why the next sentence literally says, the correlation is high enough to indicate that the two tests have very much in common.
Yeah. Cody's a liar.
But
What's
see,
new?
because it's 0.8 and not 1. So there's a 2% variability range in there. Okay. That's why they say, well, it's not a perfect direct one-to-one, comparison.
It's like an 80-20 thing.
Right. So, yeah, there you go. It's 80-20. So Cody, snake in the grass, says, well, Jordan Peterson's just lying because it doesn't perfectly match up. Okay. Because Jordan Peterson, when he's talking on stage, doesn't want to say, hey, the military gives a test out. Now, this test is not exactly the IQ study, but it's a 0.8 comparison to the IQ study. So let me explain to you the scoring system that the military has, even though it completely has nothing to do with anything, and it actually brings around the exact same fucking point I'm talking about, and everyone knows what an IQ test is when you say it.
Yeah.
Okay? Because what Cody doesn't fucking know, because him and his research were too fucking lazy to look it up, is that Jordan Peterson is actually fucking right. There is a literal law that prevents the military from taking people if they score too low on this test.
Right.
The military is not allowed to take you in. It's the fucking law passed by Congress.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And then on top of that, and this is where, and we'll talk about the McNara's.
Is it close to the 83 IQ?
Well, yes.
Okay.
But then on top of that, the various military organizations, none of them even hit that low bottom range modifier that Congress says you can't take from. they're all much higher than that range.
Yeah, of course.
So the military has an even higher range of intelligence acceptability that they'll allow than what is legally allowed.
Right.
So Cody's doubly fucking wrong here. And an idiot and a moron.
Yeah.
Okay. And to answer your question, that range, that bottom range, everything that I've seen says that bottom range that the law says you're not allowed to have people enlist under correlates to having 80 fucking IQ.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. 80 is what I heard. Yeah.
Right. And the way they draw that is because it's the same percentile.
Right.
It's the same like bottom 10 percentile or whatever it is. I think it's the bottom 10%. The bottom 10 percentile is 80 IQ, and it's the people that score the bottom 10 percentile on the test.
Yeah.
So.
It's scary. Are we gonna pull the clip up? The guy talking.
We can pull the
about
clip up, but
grenades?
I want Cody to dig his fucking
let's let him dig his
deeper.
grave a bit. I think the clip just sells it. It's like, dude, this guy was there. He wrote a fucking book on it. He's giving lectures about it. Like, not only that, it's a total abdication of Cody's responsibility. Of someone in the chat said 350,000 people were a part of this program. That's fucking crazy.
Right. And we'll talk about the program, in a little bit.
And the requirements are flexible. You can do poorly on the test and still get into the military. Also, as I noted,
well, it depends what you depends how you're defining poorly. Because no, there is a fucking bottom criteria, Cody. You lying snake, or you idiot who didn't fucking research this. There is a bottom criteria, and no, they don't just put you in anyway. If you get below that threshold,
you have to have like a super hot sister or something.
There you go.
IQ tests aren't exactly perfect anyway, in that they suck and are racist. Second,
which he again brings up a thing that doesn't actually say that IQ tests suck and are racist.
Right.
But okay.
So is the test to get in the military racist too? I mean, he never really says.
Oh, I think he says that later.
Are all tests racist?
Right. All tests are obviously racist.
I guess.
Jordan tries to mitigate that fact by talking up how during World War I, the military took IQ really seriously and therefore conducted really good tests. Except we know that's not true either. In fact, the tests at the time were extremely flawed and mainly focused on familiarity with American culture, as opposed to any universal intelligence. Like, they were specifically and historically seen as bad.
Okay, so I looked into this claim. So first of all, Cody, again, is being a lying snake. Jordan Peterson never said that in World War I, the U.S. military had the best IQ test. That's not what he said. And we can go back if you need to hear it. He said that they're at the forefront of trying to do intelligence research.
That's when they started.
Right. He didn't say that they had the best IQ test in the fucking world. He said they're at the forefront of it, which is an objective fucking fact.
Right. Because nobody else was doing it at the time.
Right. And because, as Jordan Peterson said, it was very important. It's fucking World War I. They want to make sure, They don't want any dummies out there. Okay, so that's the first thing. So, again, Cody completely lies and strawmans of something that Jordan Peterson doesn't even say. The second thing is, I looked into this claim that everyone acknowledges that the tests that were given out, the IQ tests that were given out during World War I were, like, shitty and racist, okay? I found only one person making this claim.
Cody Johnson.
It's Stephen Jay Gould. It's the person who wrote the book that he put up on screen.
Oh, Gould. I know
it was Gould that said this. Yeah. We've talked about Gould in the past.
Of course. He's like a big-time evolutionary biologist.
Right. But he's the only one. It's not, and he could be right, he could be wrong. I don't fucking know. But
he's also like a massive lefty too.
Yeah, I know. But it's not some like objective fact. No, it's not. Everyone doesn't agree that this is like that. These tests were just universally panned for being horrible and racist. That's not true. Stephen Jay Gould said it. I saw people countering and saying, "Well, they didn't. They don't agree. That they think the tests still hold up to today." And the complaint, and yes, and then Cody again misunderstands the complaint too. The complaint wasn't. He says, "Oh, it was more like it was." Here, let me go back.
Extremely flawed and mainly focused on familiarity with American culture.
Okay, the IQ test didn't focus on familiarity with American culture. It just had questions that Gould argues if you weren't familiar. So, okay, let me back up for a second.
Yeah, if you
there were
weren't
two
familiar
versions of the test.
If you weren't familiar with American culture, you wouldn't be able to take the IQ test. But thankfully, they were giving the IQ test like 100 years ago when people were familiar with these things.
Right. So, well, hold on. So this is 1919, right? Or actually, no, I'm sorry. It's World War One. So it's before 1919. It's like 19. I don't even know when World War One was. Whenever the fuck World War One was. Okay. In the early 1900s. There were two tests. There was a test for those that could read English.
Oh my God, no way.
And there was a test for people that could not read English or were illiterate.
Right. So it's a written versus an oral test.
Well, no, it was a written test, but they used pictures instead of like word. Okay. And so Gould is talking, the part that I saw, Gould is specifically criticizing the picture test.
Okay.
And
really?
He was saying,
oh my God.
Yes. And he was saying that this picture test is supposed to be designed for people that are illiterate, but also for people that were new immigrants in America.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was saying it was poorly done because the picture test would use, pictures of things that maybe people that were not American would understand or process well enough. And so that was part of the critique.
Right.
So that's what Cody is referencing when he just mangled that criticism.
Well, bottom line is they may have scored a little lower than their actual IQ. That's like the only downside, but
right.